Welcome to the show. This is the Goodwind podcast, and I am Niko, your host. Thank you so much for joining. If you like the show, please remember to subscribe, share the episodes you like, throw a comment out there. And this episode, we will be going into, I'll be sharing one of the worst things I've ever been a part of. And there's a reason to this, because I'm getting the sense that people are reaching out to me now and they're asking me for advice. And I just want a gentle reminder that, there's evidence to support the fact that I'm a shithead and that I've been a part of. And this is not, I noticed that there's a lot of people that are like, I'm an idiot, don't listen to me. And then they go into like some pretty strong philosophical rants. It's not just that, it's people are reaching out to me with questions, and it seems like they might need a reminder that failure is so important. Like losing, if you will, is important. It keeps you hungry. It guides you in your directions and your paths. That when you're laying in bed at night and you're just about to drift to sleep and then you remember something cringy and go, oh, out loud, oh, there seems to be a purpose of that. It's like the banks of a river of life, So don't fully try to deny yourself the stumbling and the rejection. And, my advice is always the same with wearing in a different place. I basically ask questions so that a person can answer their questions themselves. It's always an attempt to reorientate the person reaching out as the solution as well. That's it. That will always be the answer. The answer is you. Okay? And like I said, it wears different masks, and sometimes I share experience, that I've been through. But like someone will reach out and be like, hey, what should I do with this girl or woman or man? But I was thinking of one in particular. He's like, I've been with this woman for a long time or for some time, and everything's great. She's kind, she's caring, compassionate. We have good conversation, but the sexual chemistry isn't there. What should I do? Don't know. Can't possibly know. He was from Australia too. It's like, don't know. I mean, and so what do I do? Instead of just ignoring the message, right? Which also might be valuable as a non-answer. But I answer the message. I say, I don't know enough about this situation. I don't know, but I'd be willing to hear more details. I have had 3 relationships in my life. I've had 3 girlfriends. And with one of them, it was a similar situation. There just wasn't the frequency in which we wanted sex. It differed greatly. At that time, I felt like I needed sexual interaction. What I maybe have needed was some sort of physical intimacy and not necessarily like penetrative sex. And I might not have been able to communicate that or build up that attraction, or we just weren't compatible. And it was a particular relationship, without getting into many details, like yeast infections are a thing. That's all I'll say. And some women can't have sex too much because, it causes them discomfort, and it's not worth it. So our sexual frequency varied quite a bit. And this, in a lot of ways, call it what it is, shallow or what have you, or whether it was an indicator of a much greater thing, this led to our separation, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. Because The sexual frequency was so infrequent from my perspective that I carried around this resentment and animosity. And, what kind of relationship can flourish in that? Now, I do want there to be a distinction because sexual frequency does seem to be important, but also allow your sexual relationship to grow. Like, there might be a rule of thumb, like in the first 3 months, if you're not like kind of all over each other, completely infatuated, fucking like rabbits, or just like in that, if you're not fully feeling that honeymoon phase, like I've heard people tell me then that's not the person for you. There's not the chemistry there. But eventually things simmer down, and my point is, frequency of sex, it might be something. Frequency of intimacy, there might be something there. But if you just feel like you guys are having a lot of sex, the frequency's there, but the sex isn't great, or it isn't what X, Y, or Z, allow yourself time to develop in that aspect. Trust takes time. It takes so much time to build. And even when you think you trust someone fully, like you've been going out for a year, right? You guys you spend every day together. You feel like, oh man, I trust this person so much. There's no way like we can trust each other even more. We trust each other so much. It goes deeper. A lot of times you don't even realize you're fronting or the walls you have until there's like trust is established, and it's established over time. I'm in a 6-year relationship right now, and as much as I thought I trusted, I thought we trusted each other like in year 1, which we probably did. We've grown in trust so much. Trust takes going through some shit. It takes some conflict plus conflict resolution. Conflict is inevitable. You don't have to seek it out. But as long as you guys can make it through it, this is how trust is built. And with deeper amount of trust, that sexual experience gets better. So I guess if I'm throwing out like a general rule here, but like if the frequency is not there, if you guys can't like align on how much you want to have sex, or if there's like, if it's kind of, there's just a big difference in the amount of intimacy people need, maybe that's something of incompatibility, maybe. But if you guys are able to show intimacy at like a similar level, but you feel like you're just not, the chemistry isn't there, I'd say go a little further. Stick with it, especially if they have a lot of other redeeming qualities, like they're kind and etc. So yesterday was a pretty strange day in terms of there's just a rare occurrence that happened. I go on a walk every single day pretty much. I have a dog, so it's like I do go on a walk every day. And I have a forest behind my house, so it's a lot of times it's off leash, and we peruse around the forest. There are a few trails, some deer paths that we walk down and do some exploring. And walking, in similar spots, my dog and I, we stumbled upon a deer skeleton, but it wasn't just a deer skeleton. It was a skull, a full vertebrae, ribs, and legs. Everything was stripped down to the bone. Everything. Except the bottom quarter of the legs still had skin, tendon, and hooves. if you want a visual, it's graphic, but I did post it on my Instagram with a disclaimer about how it being graphic. But I had never seen a skeleton stripped down to its bones, but the skin and hooves, and it was like, if you just looked at the hooves, it's like, oh, that's a living deer. I ended up, after examining it for a while, there was no decay, no maggots or anything. So it was like a day old, maybe less, fresh kill. And these coyotes or wolves, they just, oh my God, down to the bone. Nothing left except the skin on what would be our forearms and hooves. And I ended up picking it up, and there was still pliability in it. The fur was still soft. Like, it was just such a surreal experience to see the contrast of like skeleton, nothing left, and then like full foot, deer foot. And I just like sat there for so long. It was one of those moments where you just like kind of, I don't know. It's not a freeze. It's not a flight. It's not a fight. It's just like a presence or something. And to me, in my mind, like, I wasn't disgusted or scared or anything, because, you know, I've made a lot of strides eating meat lately. Like, I rejected meat. I did the vegetarian thing. I did the vegan thing. For a while. It did not serve me. I have a lot of doubts about it now, but at the time it felt like the right thing to do. And so I've come a long way of kind of accepting that death feeds life. Death feeds life. And even farming and growing my own fruits and vegetables, it's like I take the fruit. Fruit's kind of a weird one. But like, I think about like carrots or onions or anything where I have to harvest the whole plant pretty much I kill the plant in order to eat it, right? I mean, that's clear, right? It's like, I hear the one argument that just doesn't make sense for me in veganism and vegetarianism is like, well, animals' lives matter, and you shouldn't create a hierarchy over animals. You're no better than animals. And I want to go one step further and say, but you're creating a hierarchy over plants. If you're going to acknowledge an animal consciousness because it's mobile, because it has a central nervous system, right? Is the life of a plant lesser? Like, why can't you like the circle of life, if you don't want to build a pyramid, right, of hierarchy, like the circle of life includes plants, everything's on the same level. So I find it interesting that you're willing to put a hierarchy over, making a cow more prestigious than a Brussels sprout plant or whatever, And I eat it all. Like, I kind of, as I'm talking about this, like, I can definitely see the validation in there, right? Like the nervous system thing, like a cow can interact with you and it's very visible. But I take some plant medicines, right? And all of a sudden I'm talking to the spirit of the radish, And the spirit of the radish doesn't seem so mundane or low intelligence. It seems just as valid. So I find this deer carcass, and part of me is like, do I take any of it? Like, there's a skull there. It's kind of cool. Like, the hooves being completely intact, like, those also seem kind of cool. So I'm kind of sitting there reflecting on it. And also I'm brewing up a little bit of, I guess, superstition. I want some genuine feedback on this, but when you see things in nature, how much value is in it to make it a sign of something else? Humans, like in a critical way, humans are meaning-making machines, right? So we see something and we say, "Oh, that relates to me in this way," or "Oh, that makes sense." Like hindsight's 2020. Like, "Oh, that makes sense now that I saw that uh, picture of an elephant because I don't know, like elephant because someone gave me a shirt that had an elephant on it for my birthday." It's like, wow, what are the chances? Like, what are the chances that I was just thinking about that and now it's come to be? And I waver in between. It's like, it does feel like symbology and synchronicity and synchrodestiny is there. And I do believe in the magic and the mystery, but I'm also weary to put too much weight into it, because when I see a deer carcass with its feet still intact, I'm like, what does this mean? Like, it doesn't feel warm and lovely. It feels a little bit scary. And so I kind of just sat there with, it's like in this grasslands field near the forest behind my house. And, I ended up leaving it after picking it up and kind of like pulling it apart and seeing if there's anything and like touching it, interacting with it. I ended up leaving it, but I took some pictures and I posted them. And a friend reached out and he said, "Hey, is that skull? Is there a way I can get that skull?" And I said, I felt kind of weird about taking about it, but I'll go there tomorrow and see if it's still there, because I figured the coyotes would come back and eat the bones. And if it's still there, yeah, I'll consider it. But you have to give some sort of sacrifice to the earth or something. There has to be some sort of exchange to make me feel better about it. And so I went out there today, and the skull was still there, but I realized there was still like brains inside of it. And a quarter of the jaw was missing, or I'm sorry, 3/4 of the jaw were missing. There was only a quarter left. The coyotes really went in on it. And I ended up taking it, and I'm growing my own tobacco in my closet. You can probably see the light above my right shoulder. That's a sun lamp for growing tobacco. And one of my tobaccos started flowering this morning. And you want to pick off the flowers because it increases the potency of the leaves, which is what you end up harvesting and drying for smoking. But tobacco is really important ceremoniously. It's used for prayer. And so I picked off the flowers and the skull. I brought them to the skull. I buried the skull so that the brains can be eaten out pretty much in a year or two, so I can give it to my friends. So I buried it with the tobacco and had a little funeral today. So I had a little bit of funeral, and I've done this a lot of times. And this is not boasting, because it's just what I've done. I don't know if this is weird, but I bury like almost every dead animal I see, besides roadkill. If I stumble across any animal, I'll have a little funeral for it. It must make me feel better in some way. I don't know why I do it, but I've done it for a very long time now. Some sort of empathy or sympathy practice to help myself understand death or build a little peace within myself. And so I had one today. I buried the skull with a little bit of tobacco, with a tobacco flower, said a little prayer, and I don't know. So something spooky or something tragic did happen. So I found these remains. I'm like, what does this mean? Is to find death like this and like kind of like horrific death, right? To find a skeleton still with its feet, whatever. I've said it once already, and it's kind of horrific. And I'm like, I don't know what the meaning of this is, and I come home and I get a call, and I'm not going to get into any details here, but a family friend committed suicide. And damn, that's all. I mean, that's all I'll say about it. Because it's tragic, particularly tragic. Younger than me, a man took his life, and it's kind of strange, right? It's kind of strange to happen upon a symbol of death, and then to receive news of death. So it keeps like the door open for the symbology of life and the symbology of nature as it pertains to the rest of my life. And yeah, so prayers to that family. And yeah, so the funeral that I held today was not only for the deer, but it was also for the family and the passing of the young man, transitioning into a place or something easier, more free, more peaceful somehow, and in a good way. And the mantra, death feeds life, it seems to kind of crumple when like suicide's involved, right? Because human death, it doesn't really feed life anymore. Like through embalming techniques and like preservation and mummification, modern day mummification, and like putting makeup on a dead body and stuff, it's like we don't even get the chance to deteriorate back into the earth, at least physically. And then we're sealed in a casket, and yeah, it's just human death almost doesn't feed life as it is right now. And yeah, it kind of doesn't make sense, that mantra that came to me, and how easily I simplified like this deer's death. So, well, death feeds life. Those coyotes needed food, or they wouldn't have made it through the winter. And that's just the way it is. Yeah, and then you get news about a human dying. Yeah, it just doesn't seem to perfectly add up. I don't understand the synchronicity exactly. Maybe nor do I need to. Maybe nor do you need to. Oh, I don't know what to make about that. I want to like continue to talk about suicide and my own experience with it, um, and just find a way to like bring peace to people, to encourage them to keep going, to practice gratitude in a way that you can feel it and understand it, even on your low days. And it's really not possible to give that to someone. I don't know. This year's been tough on everyone. It's been tough on everyone. I need to like clear the air, because I wanted to talk about just like a shitty thing I did in college. And I will. Onward. Last thing, if there's thoughts of suicide, I'm not convinced that like there's anyone who doesn't think about it at least once in their life, I feel like everyone can empathize and relate on some level to the idea of not wanting to be here. And it kind of pains me when I hear people say, oh, I just don't understand. I just don't understand. It's like, maybe try to understand, you know? Maybe shut up, because you not understanding and your confusion isn't helping. Maybe look into your heart a little bit and see that the pain that exists, maybe the pain that you've suppressed, maybe the pain that you're continuing to suppress by saying you don't understand. Maybe dig a little deep and empathize so that you can truly sympathize with the family and sympathize with the loss, and hopefully eventually get to a place of celebration of death. I mean, that's the goal for me, right? To get to a place to fully accept and to find a sense of celebration in the passing or in the transition into either nothingness or something else. So in college, I did some pretty questionable things, some pretty shitty things, you know? You don't know yet, but maybe you can imagine. I spent most of my time drinking and out in bars and trying to pick up women, be intimate and failing, and just doing stupid shit, drinking way too much by anyone's standards, really. And I joined a frat. In the first year of the frat, every year in the frat, we did this thing called, what was it called? Every year we went on a trip as a frat to the Lake of the Ozarks, which, if you've never been or don't know, it's in Missouri. It is a long, like 100-mile lake, but it winds almost like a river, and it gets wide at some points, and there's a lot of inlets and outlets, and there's certain coves of this lake. It's a huge drinking lake. There's Party Cove. It's in some country songs, and it's like it's a perennial spring break, right? Destination. People, they tie up their boats together. Women take their tops off. Beer bongs. White people, just country music. It's that. And I've been there, right? My family used to go there every 4th of July. This was high schoolish, and I didn't really party much, but actually when we first went down there, I went down with a couple friends, and we had this little scheme. We weren't old enough to drink, but we were old enough to cause mischief, and we rented a boat. My family rented a boat, and they'd let us take it out sometimes during the day for a couple hours, and we would go to different bars on the lake, and we'd run schemes. This is so shitty and so stupid. We'd run schemes to steal posters off their walls or steal signs from them. And we were pretty successful in the terms of we ended up going home with like 30 signs, 30 posters, like all alcohol posters. Some of them didn't make sense. They were like $5 shots of garbage, like the schedules printed on like Smirnoff Ice posters with the bar name on it. Like, it didn't make sense. They weren't artistic. They were like advertisements, and they cost the bar money, and we were shitty high school kids who had nothing better to do, so we would go to these bars in the middle of the day. 2 people would be a distraction, and 1 person would disassemble the posters from the wall, roll it up, and then tuck it into swimsuit, put their shirt over it. And we ran this like shitty scheme. This is not even the shitty thing I did in college, but this maybe talk about the ripple effects of life. This is how I spent my first times in Lake of the Ozarks, so I guess it makes sense that I have to go back to Lake of the Ozarks and have like a cleansing ceremony and ask for forgiveness from the lake and ask for forgiveness from the community. Because it gets worse. In college, what we would do is we would rent Greyhound buses. Let's say there was 100 guys in the frat, and there probably was. Maybe even more. We would rent 3 or 4 buses and drive with dates. It's called formal. And we would get dates and we would drive down to the lake of the Ozarks. And we rented out motels and hotels. And it was like a 9-hour trip down to the lake of the Ozarks. And we would just get blind drunk on the buses. So drunk. Oh my God. The first year on the bus, I brought a beer bong and I became like the beer bong guy. I like carved out a little niche for me. Like, I have the beer bong and everyone gets one. And there was some sort of power with like putting a tube in someone's throat and pouring beer in it, and how shitty, but it's what I did at that time to feel better about myself. And it got to the point where we got so drunk that I ended up giving someone a beer bong in their butt. And that's extremely dangerous, by the way. I didn't know it at the time, but your large intestine absorbs rapidly, so you can get alcohol poisoning by ingesting alcohol through your butt. And I put a beer bong in someone's butt and I poured a beer in it. And I don't know if I'll ever be forgiven for that from the Lord. I think I bring a little levity to it now. The person's okay and they consented. But what were we doing? So that's how this trip started out, and it gets worse. So we get to the hotel. It's a small hotel on the lake, and we rent out pretty much the whole thing. There's maybe 40 rooms, and we got them all. All right, the frat has them all. You're either sharing, you're with your dates, you got your own bed, and you're sharing, or whatever. And we pretty much drank the whole weekend, and then we left. Now, what did we do to pass the time as alcoholic late teens and very early 20-year-olds, young adults? Well, we destroyed things. Somehow, some way. I don't know if you're a guy, you may have experienced this, or if you've ever been in like a situation that like feels super tense and all of a sudden something breaks or something smashes, it can trigger this tidal wave of destruction. Sometimes when things are balancing on a rager's edge, it just takes like a moment, like a little push. I mean, this might be getting too real because, I mean, the riots, there are rabble rousers. There's people who push things over the edge to justify brutal force. And that's super fucked up. And all I'm pointing at is the feeling of the tension building, and then all of a sudden someone does something, and then it turns into chaos. Because we were drinking, having a decent time in these like this dorm style hotel, small hotel, and a bunch of meatheads were in my frat, and all of a sudden someone kicks someone's door down as a joke. It's not their door, it's the hotel's door, but someone kicks someone's door down. By the end of the weekend, so the freshman and sophomore class was in one building, and that there might have been 30 rooms. I don't know the amount of rooms, 50, 70, but there was 20 in one hallway and maybe 10 in another hallway. There was only one door left on its hinges. One door out of 30 or 40. Every other door had been smashed. Glass littered the hallways. Littered it. Instead of carpet, there was glass. Furniture thrown into the lake, out windows, smashed, broken. I have no idea how people ended up okay, but there are holes in the walls, just complete destruction of this motel. So sad. So tragic. And we really didn't fully comprehend the destruction that we had caused until the owner and his wife, the elderly owner and his elderly wife, came back on the Monday to see what we had done, only to drop to the floor and start weeping. I don't know if anyone from the fraternity is listening to this, but we need to repent. How did we get there? Now, as a freshman and sophomore in this frat, you're powerless, right? There's a hierarchy that's imposed. There's a certain amount of hazing to keep you in check and so you earn your chops or whatever. And a lot of the hazing was destructive. It was drinking. There's just such a stupidity that grows in fraternities. Maybe there's some good ones out there. I haven't seen many. There's just, what a terrible idea. What a terrible idea to have boys leading boys. It's like having horses babysit dogs, It's just such a stupid idea to have no true elder, true guidance. Your elder is 22 years old. That is the ranking official of fraternities, or at least the on-field general of fraternities. So maybe the feeling of powerlessness plus the encouragement to just get blind, wasted, and drunk leads to this destructive element. I remember one other time I experienced this. And by the way, when you're destroying stuff, because I partook, I maybe broke 4 or 5 doors. I'm guilty. Guilty as charged. I remember I was lifting a tremendous amount of weight at that point, and I think someone this meathead that I was really good friends with. I used to live with him all the time. He's he just egging me on, and he basically got me to throw a guy. He wasn't a small guy; he was taller than me, but he was thin. I threw him across a room and into a radiator, up and on. That's so. I'm sorry to him. And when you're destroying stuff, it feels so like the blind fire and rage of a young man who has genuine anger. There might be something to it, but there might be something to it at a young age. You might need to punch your bed sometimes, or beat up your pillow, or maybe even break a thing or two. But if that's your go-to therapy, if you are Kali, destroyer of worlds, you're on a path of destruction yourself. I don't think it's any long-lasting therapeutic prescription. I think there's a level of internal analysis and sitting and truly feeling your emotions, truly feeling that anger, which might be sadness, and truly feeling that sadness and allowing yourself to emote and understand and and not shying away or running away or fighting away from it or struggling. I think a bit of that will be needed if you want to overcome your anger or trauma somehow in a good way. And there was one other time I was visiting Indiana and the University of Indiana, and I was at this kind of stranger's house, and we went into their basement, and now 2 of the roommates were with us. So it was a house with like 5 guys in it, and 2 of the guys were with us, and they got drunk, and all of a sudden they started like breaking glasses, and it took 1 glass to be broken. Oh my God. 1 glass to be broken. Every single thing in the basement was destroyed. We had hockey sticks and baseball bats, and we just beat furniture into oblivion, smashed anything that could be smashed. Again, just fucking destruction for the sake of destruction. And it was fun. Like, it was really fun. And it was strange because it was 2 of the people who lived in the house were encouraging it. So it felt right. And I remember the other 2 roommates coming down, or one of the roommates coming down and seeing what we had done. And again, not even angry, just so sad. It's just so sad. And I had known this guy since like Little League Baseball. And for him to see me with like come down and I have like a drunken smile of like destruction in my eyes, along with like 4 or 5. If it was just me, you'd probably been so mad. But there was like 4 or 5 of us, including the 2 roommates, just destroying shit. Man. So death feeds life. Destruction feeds creation. I don't want to deny like the destruction, the Kali energy. I think there's no use in denying it. Like, even our cells have to be, when they die, they have to be eaten. They have to be consumed. Disease has to be swallowed up and destroyed in the body for health. Chaos at one level can be order at a higher level, and vice versa. This episode is crazy. It's a little weird. Oh, that felt good. God, sneezes are... If you stop yourself from sneezing, I will pray for you. I pray for you right now. Please let your sneeze out. Please be free. I'm in a room by myself, so I didn't even cover my nose. But I'll cover my nose. I'll cover my mouth. I'll do the shirt over the face. But if you're not letting your sneezes out, you're denying yourself pleasure of existence. Sneezing is so pleasurable. It's such, your body wants to do it so bad. It wants to get something out. Please don't deny yourself a sneeze. I hear, nothing pains my heart and chest to hear someone holding back on a sneeze. And then they do it like 5 times in a row. I'm like, please let it out. Please be free. Because I don't think it stops there. I think someone who can't let themselves sneeze is someone that can't let themselves feel and accept pleasure in their life. Please let yourself sneeze. Let it out. Let it out. Please. And I encourage it every time. Every time I see someone, I go, hey, please let it go. Whatever is in there doesn't need to be there anymore. You need to let that shit go. And it starts with sneezing. So if you take anything from this convoluted, scary, enlightening episode, it's something practical, and that's please let yourself sneeze. This has been the Goodwind.